welcome back to the Two Mom Life podcast. I am so excited to be here with Liba Lurie today. And Liba is fantastic. She is a mom of four. She's a psychologist, and she helps parents develop confidence in their parenting by addressing the root challenges and teaching them the skills to build solid relationships, both with themselves and with their kids. And that's like just so awesome. It's a different focus to a lot of parenting experts and parenting coaches. And so I'm just so excited for this conversation. Today, we're going to focus on the five steps to regain your calm and respond consciously to your kids. So I'm not sure where this conversation is going to take us, but I know it's going to go somewhere good. And Liba, I'll turn it over to you to just tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your story, and we'll take it from there.
Awesome. Thank you, Jodi. I really appreciate it. It's really a pleasure to be here with you and your listeners.
Yeah.
So thanks for that introduction. So a little bit about me and what I do. As you said, I'm a psychologist, I'm a mom, and like everybody else, at one point or another, I realized I do not know what I'm doing. And that was pretty soon on in my career as a mom. And like many women who I have the pleasure of encountering, I was just sure that I would know what to do. Like I was sure that I had it down. I knew what I wanted. I knew what kind of mom I want to be in, the relationships that I want to have, and the attitude and the mood and the sort of philosophies I had were so clear. My philosophies were so clear. Then I had kids, and it was like the ground crumbled from beneath me, and it wasn't just the shock. The physical shock of motherhood and the practical shock, but the emotional shock. I didn't realize how becoming a mother was going to affect me emotionally, and how I would suddenly feel emotionally ill-equipped. Even though in my head, I knew what I wanted, even in my head, the image was clear, I couldn't seem to actualize it. And as my kids got older and I had more, it seemed to become more amplified and apparent. And I didn't really know what to do. And in light of my background, I know I speak to many women that in light of my background, I found it very hard to reach out for help. I didn't know where to turn to. I didn't know who to turn to. I was ashamed of myself. I thought that I got it all wrong. And we have all this, we get a lot of implicit messages from society around motherhood and what it means to be a good mother. And if you're not a good mother, of course, it's fair to reason, then you're bad. And it's as if we only have two choices. And so I did a lot of work on myself, in my relationship with myself, in my relationship with my partner and my children, in parallel with a master's in psychology and starting clinical practice. And there was a real journey that helped me identify what it takes to move from this place of chaos and confusion and overwhelm and isolation, physical isolation and also emotional isolation. You can be in a room full of people and feel very alone, to a place of wholeness and mind, wellness, joy, and most importantly, satisfaction, which was something I learned about in this journey of motherhood, of satisfaction, and the importance of it, not just for myself, but for my children, and what role that plays in relationships. I developed this framework on that, through that process, and I share it now in my community, in the Motherhood in the Making community.
Beautiful. And I hope you'll tell us more about that community in a little bit. But
I will.
Yeah, totally. No, I think that's so, thank you for sharing, because as you said, so many moms, I think, are experiencing go through such a similar journey. We're all different and we all, feel it in different ways, but there's just this kind of, this letdown often that I find in the moms that I speak to, and myself as well, around things not being the way we thought it would be, and that emotional letdown and all those feelings that you described. So thank you for sharing that. And so tell us more about your framework and what it really means. I'm really intrigued by this aspect of your framework where you say you kind of take the focus away from focusing on the children's behavior and focusing on a mother's relationship with herself. Like practically, what does that look like and what does that mean? What's the fundamental difference there?
So when we think of parenting just as a verb, and when we think of parenting as a field of service, right? I'm a parenting expert. Most parents think that how are you going to help me? How do I get my kid to start doing something I want them to do or stop doing something I don't want them to do? And that makes sense because the behavior triggers for us an experience. The behavior brings up something for us. Now, first and foremost, I should say, just on a practical level, sometimes the behavior is not okay. It's not, and I don't know what to do. And that's fair. But sometimes when we find ourselves, many parents will speak to me and say, I've tried everything. I've tried I've read all the books. I've tried all the techniques, and I'm well-read parents like you and myself and your listeners who are really up to date. They listen to podcasts. They're very much invested in their children and their relationships with their children, but it just seems like a Band-Aid. It just seems like it's dissatisfying. It's like, I'm not really getting to the root of it, and something is missing here. It feels like there's something missing here. And the framework is not just about regaining your sense of calm and confidence in the moment, which it does in the moment, but really what it's about is a framework not just to handle the chaos, but really to work through during the calm, to develop a stronger sense of awareness, regulation, calm, connection with your child, and clarity, so that even if you don't know exactly what you're doing, Jodi, you still feel okay with that. And I think that's really important as parents, that first to know there's no right and wrong. It's not black and white. It's not, or you're a good mom or you're a bad mom. It doesn't work that way. That is not how the world is created. It's not that way. The world, it's, and you just look outside, like there's so many ways. There's so many ways to perceive and experience the world. So ultimately, it's a choice. We have a choice. To make choices, we need to be conscious. It's hard to be conscious if we're feeling threatened, if we're feeling triggered, overwhelmed, stressed. These are the words that many of us use. And so this framework helps to move you from a place of stress and overwhelm and triggered to a place of consciousness and awareness and presence, so that even if you are experiencing overwhelm and stress, as I say, you can control it. It doesn't control you. It doesn't go away. We're not trying to get rid of it. And in light of what you're asking about behavior, we're not trying to stop our kids' behavior. And that's what most of us do. We're like, how do I stop this? How do I make it go away? How do I control it? That's not how relationships work. Think of any other relationship. I'm not trying to control the relationship of anybody if I'm in a relationship with them. A real balanced relationship, a mutual relationship, one with clear boundaries, healthy boundaries and awareness, is a relationship where two whole parts can exist and connect together. Not one where one tries to control the other. The parent-child relationship is a little different, right? Because our relationship is, as you and your listeners will know, is actually shaping their development.
Right.
We know this. We know this from scientifically. We know neurologically how the brain shapes. How experience shapes the brain. And so there's an added element here, but it doesn't change the fact that relationships the foundation of the relationships that we're developing for our children, that are shaping them, that relationship still should not be based on control. And if we feel that we need to control something and do something, it's not bad. We're not judging it, but it does call us to pay attention to it. And that's what the framework helps you do, is to recognize that something's not right here, to bring attention to it, understand what's happening for you, connect with your child, and then consciously respond in light of your goals and your wishes and wants, with theirs in mind as well. And to over time develop a relationship, in your interactions. It's not about getting it right. And I say, perfection's a unicorn. We're not trying to get it right. We're trying to find joy and satisfaction.
Yeah.
And I think we get stuck in our heads and around behavior, the doing, and then we're sort of in judgment. We're trying to survive, really. It's really, our brain is just operating to survive. And we're like, get it right. Am I getting it right? Like, whoa, let's suspend that for a second. And let's connect with our parts of ourselves that want, wish, and desire connection. Because as much as you want it, believe me, your kids not only want it more, but they need it.
Yeah.
And so that's what the framework is about. That's what the framework is. Yeah. I mean, I always think I have to say, it's going to help you in the chaos too. Don't worry. Because I know that it's like, I imagine the resistance is like, oh, that's airy fairy deep stuff that, maybe I'm remembering my own resistance in the beginning of my journey. I'm thinking of myself and women like me who just are help me now. I need help.
Well, I'm listening to what you're saying and I'm thinking like, there's a lot in there. Like there's a lot in what you're saying. Can you maybe break it down? Yeah. Like maybe give an example. I don't know, something that you sometimes come across with, that you work with your clients through, or just like bring it down maybe through an example or something of how you bring this all together. I have another question for you, but I'll let you answer that and then.
Okay. So let's play. So I'll invite you. I can take an example from my practice, my clinical work, my program, my Facebook group. But I thought maybe, Jodi, you have an example. Like maybe you have an example from your life where you find yourself feeling like, oh my God, I'm going to pull my hair out. And even though you handle it well, the thought crosses your mind, I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Sure.
What am I supposed to do here?
There are plenty of examples. Like,
right? Okay, good. You want to play?
Yeah. Jodi in the hot seat. I'm not sure what mother doesn't have examples. I mean, maybe there are out there. But I mean, something that just even from tonight is like, I find so often that there's one particular child of mine where I am telling them about like 10 times in the evenings to put on your pajamas and go brush your teeth. And like, it's not that they're performing or throwing a tantrum, but it's more like they're ignoring me or pretending to be doing other things like, oh, my dad wanted me to do this, and just like not responding. And it drives me crazy. And I handle it in the best way that I can. And most nights I'm like, super calm and, it's all good. But it is that I do get this feeling of like, oh my God, like, what am I doing wrong? Like, I'm going to pull my hair out.
So what do you do? How do you handle it?
I mean, I nag her. I nag this kid. And sometimes I'll go and I'll bring the toothbrush or I'll bring the pajamas and say, hey, like, it's time to put this on, to brush your teeth, or time to put on your pajamas. And, sometimes I do that. Sometimes I'll just kind of like grab an arm and like walk this child to the bathroom to brush teeth, without saying too much. But there's usually a lot of nagging involved.
Right. So even when you handle it really well, I'll speak for you, Jodi, like even when I handle it really well, I still experience it in a very unpleasant way. It's unpleasant for me. There is no satisfaction. I'm not feeling satisfied in this. I'm not feeling in control. And that's really amazing awareness. And so there are two things here, is that there are two types. There are the parents who don't know what to do, and they don't know that, go up to your child, stop what you're doing, go up to them. Okay, so you've got that, I'm sure many of your listeners would also know too. And we're also familiar with, okay, but even when I know what to do, I still feel very irritated and very overwhelmed. And so the framework works in two ways. One, it is to help me figure out what to do in that moment. It also helps me to understand what is going on here in the dynamic in our relationship. Am I getting right? Because a lot of parents will think, what the hell's wrong with my kid? is there something wrong here? Is there an issue here? And now in our day and age, is there like an attention issue? Is there a processing issue? And like, listen, there might be, but we're very quick to want to name it because our brains operate to make sense. They are meaning-making machines. I'm not sure if I coined that. If one of your listeners knows, send me a message like, no, Liba, I read it in this book. Okay, good. I'm not sure if I read it somewhere. I might have, but I'm sure I have. But that is how I understand the brain, as a meaning-making machine, that it is constantly taking in information and processing it. How does your brain know what to do? How does it know how to apply meaning? Through experience. It's the experience that shapes our brain, right? We spoke about that just now.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's conscious and sometimes it's not conscious. It's kind of gone out of style, the unconscious. I'm bringing it back. It's retro. Yeah, I'm bringing it back like bell bottoms.
Totally.
The unconscious is really important. It is really important that we are aware of it, which is kind of a bit of a play within a play, being aware of the unconscious. A bit of a paradox there, but there's something going on under the surface, and the framework helps us not just figure out in the moment, but what's going on the surface. So this is how the framework works. So it's 5 steps. It's pause, reflect, connect, respond, repair. And the first bit is that we pause. And even before you pause, I would suggest, and I was going to ask you, and this is what I do in the course, in the program, and when I work with anybody, the first question is, what do you want? What are you here for? What's your goal? What's your vision? And we create a parenting vision, so that, and it's not about creating the vision as much as it is identifying, acknowledging, and engaging with my wants. Because so often women in general, and women in motherhood especially, because we're very conflicted between the needs of our children and our own, yes, and other people, that we lose sight of our wants. And depending on your experience, your wants being satisfied by others, also known as being parented, it's going to shape the way that you engage with yourself, capital S, self, today as a parent. And so the first thing is like, well, what do you want? So I would have asked you, Jodi, like, what do you envision? Like, what's your vision here? Like, what's your dream? What's your wish? What's your fantasy? Well, I would say, what's your daughter's name? Do you share that on your part?
Yeah.
Gila. So Gila, go put it, and she, she shuffles her little feet and she goes and she brushes her teeth, comes in her little pajamas, and she comes and she breathes in your mouth and goes, I brush your teeth. And you go, good job, awesome, yes. And you're like, oh, that feels so good, because I didn't have to nag you and I didn't have to be distracted by what I want to do, what I'd rather be doing right now, sure, or where my mind would rather be, because it's the end of the day. I've got other things on my mind and I have other impulses of my own. So we just acknowledge that. The pause is about making space and noticing that I have this impulse. And what we tend to do is we jump to do, and that's just our brain doing its thing. Mm-hmm. I got to do something here. Sounds to me like you're, you are, I'm like trying to find a really good, really professional way to say you're good at, you're good at the pause. Cause at regulating, you regulate yourself, you get centered, and you take a breath and you consciously respond. And that's amazing. Sure. Sometimes it takes practice, and sometimes it's not so easy. And depending on the situation and depending what's going on and the circumstances and the environment, internally and externally, it can be hard. In any case, that is the first step. And the pause is not just about some women in the program. When we get to the pause, they're like, I'm not feeling calm. It's not about being calm. It's actually about paying attention to the parts of me that aren't calm and observing those parts of me. And yeah, we use a breath, because the breath activates our prefrontal cortex, our ability to pay attention, our ability to regulate our stress response. Yes, that's the science behind it. But what are you doing is, I'm just observing myself. And I'm actually, usually when we're in a stress response, we're like, what's going on inside? It's actually turning inward and observing. Yeah. Oh my God. Like, whoa. And then reflect is about bringing, do you want to say something? You look like you want to say something.
No, I was just going to say that I love that. And I think the fact that this particular situation happens like night after night is like one reason why I've got to that point where I do pause before I act, and there are plenty of other situations where I just act on that stress response, and it's just like, nothing's coming to mind like right this second, but for sure. I'm a real mom. I'm a real person.
Yes. And here's the thing, Jodi, is that because you're in a state of stress, your memory does not function. That's the idea of trauma. That when our minds are in a hyper stress state where we feel particularly threatened in a moment, depending on the threat, depending what it is, we don't remember. And the part of treatment of trauma is the remembering, and not just in our brains, but in our bodies. And we do that in the program too, because a lot of what gets in the way of being able to observe myself is that I have this trauma, if you will. For some people, it's what's called big T trauma. And for some people, it's small T, what they call small T trauma. And when I learned about this, I'm like, it's not small at all. This small T trauma isn't small T at all. What it is the traumas that we experience in our relationships, in our attachments, where we turn to someone and they're not there and we feel frightened and we have to sit with that fear. We make it a small T trauma as if it's like, we poo it, like it's, oh, but I think that just is an echo of this very old, very archaic perception of children of, oh, they're resilient, they'll get over it, they're just kids. And really, actually, these experiences are quite significant for them. And I know that you know this and your listeners know this because you were a child too once. You know, being a parent means remembering what it was like to be a kid. And actually, I say, I've always said that. And then I'm like, oh my God, Mr. Rogers said that. You know? It means remembering what it was like to be a kid. And that's what the reflect is about. And that's what we do when we reflect. We have an opportunity, and I take you through in my course and my program, through the levels of reflection. And there are levels of reflection through thought, feelings, emotions, somatic. It goes deeper and deeper and deeper. Sometimes we need help with this because we have our defenses, we have things getting in the way of us, protecting us from reaching those places of, oh yeah, remember how scared I was? Remember how uncomfortable this was? And that can get in the way of being present with our child and recognizing and stepping into their mind, which is what connect is. So we pause, we reflect, and now we're able to connect. And this is, I think, is what everybody wants, is we want to nurture our child's development. We want them to feel felt. We want them to feel seen and valued. We know in our minds, in our brains, I should say, in our brains, we know rationally that this is what it takes to build up children's self-esteem and their sense of confidence, their sense of trust. And what many of us know through attachment of a secure base, of a secure mental model, that they go out into the world when they're not with you, but they feel you with them. They feel you in themselves. They've internalized you so much so that you have become a part of them. Now, for many of us, the parent that we have internalized, it's not like, oh, I have a secure relationship, so I'll internalize secure, and if it's not secure, I don't internalize anything. No, you've internalized a parent who says, you're not worth it. You're not good enough. You're not deserving. I don't want you. Now, I know this is deep and can be confronting for a lot of people. And you didn't think about this when you're like, I just wanted to know how to get my kid to put their shoes on. Just tell me what to do. And, I could tell you what to do and you could do it, but will you feel satisfied? And that's what I encourage, is that women feel satisfied, that we're not just martyrs and givers, or feel guilty when we take, but that we give. And I'll tell you what, not just for our own sakes, but for our children. Because this is how we show our children, not just through our modeling and our behavior, but in the relationship, in the unspoken relationship, in the dynamic of value. And this is what it takes to build relationships, because I can tell you from learning for myself how to have relationships with my partner and my children and friends, like, oh my gosh, I have friends now. Like, I don't know how many women can say, I have good friends. I have good friends. And it doesn't mean that, they're not my mother. They're not taking care of me. They're good friends. We want to feel satisfied in life. And this is part of it. So we pause, we reflect, we connect, and now we can respond. And we can, not only now are we responding with clear boundaries between me and my child. This is you and this is me. But that, and I'm clear about that, but that I feel confident to say no. I feel confident to say yes. Like Jodi, when when you help people plan, do that.
Liba, the audio cut out.
Like, go and do that.
The audio cut out for just a second. So can you just backtrack a second? You were saying, Jodi, you help people. And then
oh yeah, I'll repeat that. So pause. So I'm like, here's for your audio guy. Jodi, you help women fulfill their need for adventure, fulfill their need for the satisfaction that we get when we go and we see new things, the satisfaction that we feel when we nurture our curiosity. And I was telling you before about how I feel very blessed that I get to work in this field, that I get to try new things, because it's my adventure, especially now during a global pandemic, that I can't travel. Just yesterday I was saying, oh, I haven't left this country for so long. I want to travel.
Yeah.
You know, and now you help women do that. You help families do that. And it's so valuable because you are helping them feel satisfied and share that satisfaction with their children. And that is such a powerful experience. It is such a worthwhile investment, not just in memories. People say we're building memories. And I say, no, you are developing your children's perception of themselves in this world. And there is nothing more valuable, because it is so easy for one person to be in one room and see it as an unwelcoming, unkind, unsafe place. And another person can be in the exact same room and feel safe and can feel confident and can feel excited. And we are in the same room. Call it a party.
Yeah.
And you have people who go to parties and they're like wallflowers and they're scared. And you have people go to parties and like, that was amazing. That was so much fun. And they take joy and satisfaction. I want my child to be in a room, let's call it the world and life. And I want them to know that even when, I don't know, the party gets shut down or the chips run out or someone is mean to them, that it's okay. I can still have fun here. I can still enjoy this. Yeah. And I'm not just talking about momentary satisfaction. I'm talking about deep satisfaction, the kind that, that drives you. And so we have that in mind when we respond to our kids. Now, I know, ladies and gentlemen, when you are in the moment to moment, we need to have a toolbox of responses. We need to know, like, this is okay, this is not okay, you can't do this, you can't do that. And that's what we also talk about in Respond, just setting boundaries and how to set what's okay, what's not okay. And then finally we repair, because sometimes we mess it up.
Yeah.
Sometimes we mess up. And we need to take responsibility. And what I have just said, actually, I'm running the program now. What I just said now in this 7th week, where we talk about repair is actually the beginning. It's where we say, I'm responsible here and I'm taking responsibility. And sometimes I hold my child accountable and I hold them responsible, but ultimately repair is saying I'm responsible. And that means that I'm responsible for this relationship. And I'm also responsible for my own emotions in this relationship. And that means that sometimes I need to grieve things that did not happen. And it could be in this interaction that didn't go well and I feel crappy about it. It could be in my own experience being parented didn't go well and I have to grieve it. But this is what repair is about. It's about forgiveness and grief and forgiveness for ourselves, for our children, for our parents, where we also focus on, I'm not perfect. Perfection's a unicorn, and that's okay. And all together, when you put all those steps together, you have the foundation for building, not just handling, keeping your shit together in the moment, but building loving, lasting, meaningful relationships with your kids and promoting their social emotional development so that they can enjoy positive relationships as well, not just with others, but themselves.
Liba, this is so comprehensive. I mean, I want to encourage anyone who's listening, who's like really kind of, if your interest is piqued by what Liba is saying, like definitely go to her website. She always has a free guide or a free resource up on there. And we'll give you all the details for her Facebook group as well. But this, I love just like the fact that you mentioned that in the repair stage, you talk about grief. That's amazing, because we don't realize how much we actually have to grieve, like on a daily basis. And grief is something that is so often just like pushed to the wayside, and it really should not be, in my opinion. And so I just, it's just like brings this, I just see this 5-step framework as like this circle. It's like this container, and within it are all the tools and all the resources that you will need to really like develop yourself and enhance and strengthen those relationships with your kids. And I want to say side effect, but like an effect of that is working through the behaviors and the other stuff that maybe feels like the more immediate things that we might want or need support on.
Yeah. And a lot of the behaviors, Jodi, we don't know which ones, but we can pay attention and get curious about this. Like a lot of the behaviors, I shouldn't say a lot of them. It is possible that the behaviors are actually an expression of an emotional need.
Yeah.
And it's hard to know if I'm not comfortable with my own emotional needs. If I'm not satisfying my emotional needs, and what is the emotional need? The need to be seen, to be heard, to integrate and accept all parts of myself, including the grief, the rage, the sadness, the joy, the satisfaction, the wantings, all those parts of myself that you know now that you're confronted with because you've got kids. And guess what? They've got those parts too. And if you want to raise kids who feel whole, then we need to first be safe in our own wholeness. And yeah, grief is a part of that. Whenever you make a choice, you're choosing one thing, you're not choosing something else in place of something else. That is life. You choose one thing, you get one thing, but you have to sacrifice something else. You're letting go of something else. You're saying yes to one thing is a no to another.
Right.
And that's constant.
Right.
That's constant in choices.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So how does someone, what's like the first step, right? Say like, I know that there are people out there who like, as you said at the beginning of this podcast interview, like we are very focused often on behaviors and fixing behaviors, right? And so how does one, and this, what you're presenting is like, it's just a shift. It's just a shift. So how does one what's the first step to start on this journey of building our relationships with ourselves, or, incorporating this 5-step framework into our lives? What's step number one?
That's a really great question. And I feel confident to say that the first question is to ask myself, speaking in the voice of your listener, what do I want? Very often the automatic thought that accompanies that question is, I can't have what I want, or I'll experience a sense of discomfort with that. That's not okay. It's not okay to ask for what you want. And that's a reflection of our experiences and our relationship with our own wants and needs. But that is the first step. The first step is say, I want and need something because I'm human. And that is what the self, bringing back the bell bottoms here. When we talk about the unconscious, it is desires. When we talk, like Freud spoke, we all know it's so, the superego, the id, the ego. It's been developed and refined, but at the source of it is my wants and my needs. What do I want? And how do we live in a world where you can't get everything that you want?
Yeah.
Talk about responding to your kids and helping them. That's, teach about helping them to learn and feel okay with, you can want to need something. You can want, just, you can't get everything you want, I say often, but that doesn't mean that you're not allowed to want it. And making space for that in ourselves, and then, modeling it to our children implicitly and explicitly is key. It's key, is to ask myself, what do I want? So if your listeners take one thing, I would encourage them to contemplate this and ask themselves, what do I want? What do I want? Now, if you don't have an answer right away, that's okay, because this isn't magic. And I think it's important that we know that when we are working on ourselves, yes, we want quick solutions, and they exist. There are lots out there. And I think a lot of us already know what they are, 1, 2, 3 magic, and take a deep breath. And, we have these tools like, this is what I do, but this is about a journey. Relationships are a journey. This is a journey. So to suspend the desire, that it's going to make everything better. I want it to be all better. What do I want? I don't want this. So then what do you want? Sometimes the answer to what do you want is, well, I don't want my kids to do this. So then what do you want? If your kids weren't doing this, then what would it be like for you? What would that be like for you? And that can be or very satisfying to acknowledge and to embrace, or it can be confronting. And a lot of my work as a psychologist in private therapy, when I work with someone in therapy, I had a client, she's like, well, you're really different in therapy. She did my program. She's like, you're really different in therapy. I'm like, yeah, it's a different process, ladies. But that's a lot of working on, often I'm helping women to re-engage and rebuild their relationship with their self, which is essentially their wants and their needs. So the one thing I would recommend is that, to your listener, is that she or he asks themselves, what do I want? And sit with that. Sit with it. Let it brew. Let it ferment like a fine wine. What do I want? What do I want? Because it can take some time to allow my mind to feel safe with the question. What do I want? What do I, not just what do I need? And I suppose I'll write about this, the difference between wants and needs. But what do I want? Which is very base. And we, we have our relationships with our wants.
Yeah. No, that's great. And
consider.
Yeah, no, that's great. And going back, I mean, there's no right or wrong answer. It's like, it's all just
exactly
whatever
and
comes
and then
from
we can go
you.
to the pause. Exactly. And then we go to the pause, and like, there's no right or wrong here. We suspend judgment and we open our mind to just paying attention to ourselves. So many of us didn't have that in our experience. And this is where the repair happens, is that we are giving ourselves, we are the adult that the child in us needs. We become that adult. We offer it to our inner child, which is kind of cliche, but it's not like there's this moment where you stop being a kid and you become an adult. And if you think there is, I'd love to hear it. I would love to hear it, because I can tell you psychologically, there is no day that you suddenly grow up. You are just an older version. And for some of us, it means that we are just holding in, containing that child and not letting her come out, like, shut up, which is really how many of us were treated by the adults. So we've just grown into the adult who speaks to the child in the same way, and we repeat those patterns. And that's what the framework does, is it helps us to identify the patterns and to rewrite them consciously, so that I can feel satisfied and my children can too, and we can enjoy meaningful relationships. Does that mean parenting isn't hard? No. Sorry, I do not make that promise. Parenting is hard. Parenting is hard. Living with little children, not being able to get what you want, working on yourself, digging in, going to those places, unpacking things, getting up in the middle of the night. You said, you were talking in the beginning about letdown. Yeah. And for those who nurse, I didn't know that letdown was going to be so uncomfortable in my body. Like, as you were saying, like, yeah, it's interesting that it's called a letdown. I understand, it's gravity and your breast lets the milk down, but like, there's this kind of like a symbolic of the letdown, of having to give of yourself. It's a bit of a letdown. It can be a letdown. And that's where we can make space for the grief as well, that I'm not getting what I want. But that doesn't mean that I can't want it. So what do you want? What do you want?
This is great. This is like, guys, just like grab onto this, because this is good. This is good stuff. If you need to listen to this episode again or bits and pieces of it, do that, because this is gold. Like, really, it's gold. So Liba, tell everybody how they can get in touch with you, and where to just get more of, where can people tune into your classes? Because I know you offer free classes, I think once a week. So tell us, how can people get in touch?
Yeah. The best way to get in touch is through my website, libalurie.com. I'm sure you'll put that in the show notes.
Yep.
That was always updated. So whatever's happening at the time you're listening to this, that's where you'll find all resources. Like you said, I always have a free resource, and you'll also be able to access the Facebook group. If you are on Facebook, you'll be able to get into the Facebook group. When you join the Facebook group, I ask all new members for their email address, and that's so that I can email you the recording of the live class. I do give a live class every Wednesday on a different subject. And in the Facebook group is where, you can come and discuss and bring and connect with other moms like you who want to, work on themselves, build better relationships. And so I would direct your listeners to my website, and look around there, click around, and you can always contact me directly. I'm always happy to hear from people. You can, DM, PM, AM.
Awesome.
Whatever. You can just message me directly as well. But if you want to know more about, what I have to offer, you can check me out on my website.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Jodi.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Thank you to your listeners.
And guys, thanks for tuning in. It's so great to be here with you. I know that your time is valuable, and I don't take that lightly. I really appreciate you hanging out with us, hanging out with Liba and I today, whenever you're listening in, and we'll see you next time.